Welcome to Graphite Hub's interview series, a series dedicated to all things graphite. Today we're joined by Erik Olson, President of Venn Strategies, to discuss the preliminary outcome of the international trade case hearing on graphite, which could lead to tariffs of up to 920% on graphite imports from China to the US. It's great to have you with us again, Erik.
Thanks for having me again, Harry. Good to see you.
Great. So yeah, let's start off with the ITC preliminary ruling that came out last week. Can you explain the importance of this?
Sure. I mean, as we talked about the first go around, this process, these cases have statutory deadlines and timelines for the so this was the first stage gate, the first action by ITC. We're really happy with the outcome, obviously. It was a unanimous decision, 3-0 in our favor. So what it tells us is that the facts on for the trade law and for what we're focused on here on graphite is right. The hearing itself obviously took place earlier in January. We thought we had very strong arguments and thought the hearing went very well in our favor, and that Tesla and Panasonic, who were the other side of the aisle, so to speak, their arguments weren't as strong. And I think obviously having a 3-0 decision in our favor demonstrates that. So we're excited. Again, it's first step in this process, so we're through that, and we're happy, and we have a lot more obviously to go as this case proceeds.
It's yeah, it's a good outcome, but yeah, as you say, it's still early days, but I guess a step in the right direction, which is what we want to see. So I guess at the moment we're seeing a lot of talk about tariffs in the US. We're seeing, a 10% tariff on blanket imports from China that's just been recently imposed. We're also seeing, the potential for tariffs that could arise from this trade case. And then also come next year, we're seeing that there will be 25% tariffs on natural graphite imports from China. So,
Yeah.
it's not a surprise that we're seeing companies, yeah, as you say, like Tesla and Panasonic kind of voicing their opposition of these tariffs. So how would you respond to these concerns?
Sure. I mean, and this is all in the hearing record, right? So this is what our member companies argued, that they want to stand up an industry here in North America. Specifically, obviously, this is a U.S. case, so in the U.S. But as you know, our members, across the continent, and we have a couple that are operating in Canada. But the goal here is to stand up an industry so that it can service the market, and so we are less reliant on imports from elsewhere, specifically, obviously, China, which is the dominant player in graphite. Um, so we understand that, market dynamics being what they are, if you're Tesla and you're Panasonic, you want the cheaper graphite. But for national security reasons, for economic security reasons, we want to stand up this industry. And our argument has been that we're a nascent industry, that we're trying to grow, but the only way that we grow is if we have fair competition and that we have the opportunity to sell our product. Right now, that's not the case, right? The Chinese are able to dump product at ultra low prices that are not based in, the market dynamic, the based in market pricing. And so we can't compete. We can't stand up. And Panasonic and Tesla's arguments during the hearing were they're not qualified, they don't have qualified product, and they're not producing enough. Well, that's our argument. We're not producing enough because we can't because we can't grow because we're being drowned out by Chinese product, and you're the qualifying companies. I think something was really telling during the hearing that Tesla and Panasonic kept saying they're not qualified, but Tesla and Panasonic and other OEMs own the qualification process, so they could modify, change, speed up, do whatever they can. And the Panasonic, one of the Panasonic witnesses said, "Yeah, we control the process. Here's ways that we can speed it up." So we know they could go faster, but they choose not to because they want, cheaper product from China. So look, at the end of the day, we think this is the right process and the right venue to be able to make a fair market. So that we can produce graphite, stand up these industries, get offtake agreements from these companies, and have this industry, or at least a portion of this industry, be here in the US and in North America versus wholly relying on another country. So I think, again, the facts are on our side. We're headed in the right direction, we think, but, like I said before, long way to go.
No, and I think it's pretty clear that we're seeing in Washington that there's, obviously a need to reduce the dependency on critical minerals coming from China. And I think it's pretty telling that it was a 3-0 ruling last week. So would you mind just maybe going into a bit more detail on kind of the feedback that you're receiving from lawmakers so far?
Sure. So right after the hearing, we went up to Capitol Hill the next day because companies and members and CEOs were in town. So we spent the whole day up on the Hill. We did a couple dozen meetings across not only constituency members, so members that have graphite footprint in their state, but also with members of the China Select Committee in the House, Ways and Means, Finance, so folks that oversee trade law in the United States and have an interest in seeing this industry stand up. Feedback was really positive, to be honest. I think we weren't up there making an ask. We weren't saying like, "Hey, try to influence the outcome of this case," because as we talked about before in our first interview, this is pretty apolitical, right? It's not meant to be driven by politics. Obviously, politics permeate and get into the middle of a lot of things here in DC. But this process, sort of is a little bit hands off. It's data driven. So, we weren't up there on the Hill saying like, you must do something right now. We were telling them like, here's the facts. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what we want the outcome to be and how this will benefit the United States because we're going to have this, industry stand up. And so very positive feedback from members and staff. Some members were very excited and thought this was the right, way to go as far as doing a case and that we need to, combat China's influence in a variety of sectors, but, obviously in critical minerals and in graphite as well. So I think, it's been very positive. We've continued to do meetings, throughout the last month or so. And we've asked as well, which I'm sure is top of mind for your listeners, is where are the auto OEMs? So far, we haven't really had pushback. We haven't heard from offices that Tesla or Panasonic or any of the other auto OEMs are in the offices asking to push back. I still expect that to come because it's not in their economic interest, obviously. But so far, so good that we're headed in the right direction, and members and staff understand why we're doing this, and are sort of quietly cheering us on, which is what we want them to do. We don't need big public statements right now. We need the process to continue to play out at ITC and at the Department of Commerce.
Great. No, it's encouraging to hear. So kind of where to from here now?
Yeah, like I said, back to the process, right? So the
Yeah.
next deadline, I think, is March 13th.
Yeah.
So ITC had their preliminary ruling. Now, Department of Commerce will work on their countervailing duty preliminary ruling.
Yeah.
So, this is an anti-dumping countervailing duty. So we did the dumping portion. Now we're going to focus on subsidization, which is the countervailing duty part of this. We had a lot of evidence in our ruling or in our documentation with the Department of Commerce when we submitted the case that there is obviously heavy subsidization for this industry. It's not just price manipulation, but it's the cost of labor, electricity, land, inputs, right? The Chinese government and Chinese industry, subsidizes a lot of activities to ensure that graphite prices can be, very, very, very low. So now that's the next one. So we're sort of, continuing to communicate with the Hill, share information, respond to requests from those folks if they need something or want to understand the issue better or want to talk to one of the companies or understand what it means for their state or district. And we're going to wait until we get into March when we will have this, next ruling, and then we wait again. This process takes time. It won't be until sometime this fall, likely, that we will get, or even into the winter, where we'll get the full case in front of the ITC, in front of the commissioners themselves, where they'll do their ruling. So, we're working the process, keeping people informed, being very transparent about, why we're doing this and what the focus is, and we'll wait for our Department of Commerce to say the next thing here.
Great, awesome. Well, no, it's good to see where this trade case is heading at the moment. And yeah, especially in the current geopolitical climate, there's kind of a lot of moving parts. So yeah, we just want to thank you for your time, Eric, and I'm sure we'll have you back on here again soon to hopefully discuss this in a bit more detail.
Yeah, thank you again, Harry. Really appreciate the invite.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of Graphite Hub's interview series. We'll see you next time.